All right, everybody, this is Catherine Toon for the Brother Henry and You show, and I have a super special, powerful, you just love him, Paul Gray guest. In case you haven't met him before, this is Pastor Paul Gray, author of numerous books that we'll get into in a bit. Hi, Paul, how are you doing?
I'm great, Catherine. Thanks so much for asking me to be on the show.
Oh, it was my treat. It's been a little bit, so I was so excited to be able to connect. You carry something just so amazing and so powerful for the body with all the wisdom you carry and just Papa's heart that you carry. It's gorgeous and powerful and life changing. So I was really happy to be here. So
Well,
absolutely.
thanks. We're in this together. It's mutual.
Yeah, we are. It's so wonderful. And I know you had some things that were very pertinent just in terms of kind of current events, issues that have been popping up that have been really rugged and has left people scratching their heads. What do we do with this, with all the shootings that we've had recently? And I wanted to give you an opportunity to really, share from your heart, how your reaction, your thoughts, what do we do about it? How do we react? How do we respond? And, and move forward in these really tragic situations. So Paul, just feel free just to hop right in and share what's on your heart.
Well, thanks, Catherine. Obviously it's such a huge subject, but it has been on my mind a lot recently. It seems like every day when I turn on the news or open my paper, I'm kind of anticipating, dreading to see a story of another shooting or another horrific thing that's happened. And we don't have to, I certainly don't want to dwell on those things, but we also are aware of them, of course. And,
Exactly.
We've had the things in El Paso and in Ohio and in California and who knows where the last couple of days. And I've been fascinated with the response that that I see on news programs and online and stuff, and virtually everybody says, we got to do something about this. It's got to stop. But nobody seems to have, well, certainly nobody has any answers that have worked yet or would have stopped. Yeah. And, the cliche thing that we'd all love to have world peace. Well, I don't, I'm not crazy enough to say that I have the answer for world peace, but Jesus does. And when Scripture talks about the restoration of all things, the Greek word for that was apokatasis, and many of the early church fathers believed in that, and more people are believing it now. We know that ultimately, as Ephesians 1 tells us in Acts chapter 3, ultimately everything will be reconciled and restored to our original, as the mirror Bible tells us so well, our original state as God created it. So how do we get to where there's no more hatred and killing and racism and judgment and vitriol? I'm confident that the only way is for people to, first of all, understand God's true nature and understand that He is good. He's totally good. He's for everyone. He is love. That's His essence. That's the Trinity's essence. They've already included all of us in their divine triune circle dance of love and everything that flows from that. That's a done deal. We're in the process now, as Philippians says, of working out our salvation, and they're not working for it, but working what we already have inside, working that out. And so to me, what's made the difference in my life, and I believe it ultimately will in everybody's life, is to understand God's true nature, understand how God feels about us, who He's already made us to be, and then see that in everybody else. To literally see people as Christ does, because He sees them as He sees us. He loves us all the same. He's already at the finished work of the cross. The Father was in Christ Jesus, reconciling everyone forever to Him, not counting anyone's sins against us. So being able to see other people the same way, realize that when we get angry, when we do things that we wish we wouldn't have done, when we hurt other people, that's not our real self. That's our false self. That's our ego. That's the flesh, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And when we start to see that in ourselves and see everybody else that way, then we no longer judge people. We no longer exclude them. We no longer categorize them. We no longer label them. The racism and the hatred and all of that goes away. And I'm certainly not trying to indicate to anybody that I've got that down completely, but I've seen dramatic changes in my life into how I see other people. And that's to me is the answer to stop all of this. And so, well, what can we do about that individually? Individually, we're not going to achieve world peace, but individually, as we come to know who the Father is, come to know who we really are, and start to see other people the same way, and then treat other people like Jesus does, literally let Jesus live as us with them, then we start one person at a time doing that, and other people catch that from us, as I know that you've seen in your life, and Brother Henry has too, and many of us. Eventually, it will happen with the restoration of all things. So, what I can do, what you can do, is keep on teaching people these things. Let Jesus live as us as we relate to people. And that's doing our part and partnering with him. So
absolutely. And
that's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The answer is a person. It's the Prince of Peace, right? Absolutely.
Yes.
Many of the church body have been like, we just need to pray harder and pray harder. Where do you see prayer fitting into this from that perspective?
Well, from that perspective, good luck.
Right.
Yeah, no, my definition of prayer has changed a lot over the years. And, I used to go to football stadiums with, 60, 70,000 people, and, we'd all pray together and pour out our hearts and think. Literally, we thought that by getting more and more people to do that, then God would have to answer, and we would force him to move. We've
got to convince God to be good, right?
Yeah, right. Prayer has become more and more and more to me listening to God. Certainly I talk to him. Certainly I tell him. I mean, he knows how we feel, but I tell him how I feel. I tell him what I'm interested in. But I'm more and more thanking him for what he's already done, and asking him what he wants me to do to be a part of that manifesting in all of our lives, as opposed to asking him to do something that I think is what he ought to be doing right now.
Right. Oh, truly. So and go ahead.
Well, as I know you do, and many people do, I have a time in the morning where I get up and I go outside. I can't see the mountains like you can, but I can see the great scenery and everything, and it's quiet. And I spend that time talking and listening to God, and I have different things that I talk to him about, and occasionally I'll even read the Bible as I do that. But I do that all day long. I listen to him all day long. And I sort of, even when I'm with, I'm doing it right now. Lord, what do you want me to say? How do you want me to? And then would you do it as me? So it's no longer setting aside a time to pray and thinking, well, if I can double or triple or quadruple that, then God has to act. So prayer has taken on a different meaning in my life.
Sure, it's communing with God, and as you're communing with God, that Christ within you, the hope of glory, and it starts to manifest from the inside out. It literally shifts atmospheres around people. People feel better just being in your presence. And I know that's very true of you. I enjoy talking to you. Every time I talk to you, Paul, I feel better. Because why? Because
Good.
Christ is manifesting so powerfully. The person of love is manifesting so powerfully, and truly, love never fails. So that's all of that as we are communing with God in prayer, which becomes a state of being and a state of partaking of our oneness with Him, and we're able to speak and do what we're called to speak and do. The sons of God, the daughters of God, are led by the Spirit of God. How are you led? Well, you're communing with Him, and He's able to do that for you. That's wonderful. Anything else that you felt was on your heart to share about this particular issue?
No, I think I've covered it. I can talk about it for a long time, but I've covered the pertinent points, and hopefully that'll just help people who are watching and listening to think about how we feel about other people, how we're tempted to judge them, those types of things.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's beautiful. Now, you have written multiple books, and I know you've been kind of working on one with Convertible Conversations, and you have Grace Is, and then you've got Notes from Papa. You've got multiple things. Share with us, because all of these things help us to do those very things that that you're recommending, and as a response to these tragedies. So share about your books. We want to hear more about them.
Well, thanks for asking. 2 years ago, the week that we're recording this, in the last week in August, was the Hurricane Katrina in Houston and the Gulf Coast. And so my book, Convertible Conversations, starts with that happening, and it goes through how some grandparents lose their, parents who are also grandparents, lose their son and daughter-in-law in that flood. It's a novel, and as a result, they end up raising their grandson, who is like in the 5th grade when this starts out, and it takes them through all the emotions, and wondering whether or not they're still alive, why they haven't come home, all of those things, and then having to move from Texas and raise the boy in a different setting and all of that, and literally raising him through college and getting married, but giving him unconditional love, raising him with unconditional love. And so I'm getting ready to do some promotional things for that, for the 2-year anniversary of that. And that, that I believe fortunately has helped a lot of people. My next book after that was Grace Is, which is my attempt at trying to answer a few of the things that grace is. It's so magnificent and multifaceted and all-encompassing that you could cut down all the trees in the world and turn them into paper and write books and not cover what grace is. But we basically, many of us in the religious world haven't had a clue of what grace is. And I say that as myself, because I grew up in the church. I was a pastor. I would say grace. I would sing Amazing Grace. I could say, well, grace is God's riches at Christ's expense. And I really had no clue, not even a clue until I was, until I was in my 60s. So ttrying to help people understand how good grace really is, which means, how good God really is. And so it's kind of a theology book, but for kind of a basic beginning thing for, it's kind of like Grace 101, maybe, but really explaining that. And then the Notes from Papa that come out every day on different sites on social media. It's finished. It's a 366-day devotional book that's at my publishers now. We're working on a cover for it that I think I'll send out, put on Facebook, and get people's reactions, yes or no, or thumbs up or thumb down or whatever. And we've just finished proofing it. It should come out in October, so it'll be there for people who would want to get it for themselves or somebody else for a Christmas present or whatever. But it's you can start it any day, and the notes from Papa are literally things that I wrote down every day that I felt God was saying to me, and then I've tweaked that so it wasn't male oriented, so that it was for men and women, and so that and I took out some of the things that would just be appropriate for me as a musician or a whatever, and so I've made it for everybody. But I get a lot of really good responses from the notes from Papa, from all over the world. I get I'd like to say I'm not into numbers, but numbers are one of the ways that we gauge some things. Yeah. And so I literally, it appears that with notes from Papa and my videos and other things that I post, that about 100 people an hour, 24 hours a day around the world are reading something of these things. Yeah. Which is,
awesome.
It's humbling, my gosh, to just to think that I can be here in Lawrence, Kansas, and God can be saying things to me that He will then get out. And people, I love relating to people like you and to others. And I have friends in Scotland and Ireland, and I think it's like 30 countries now that watch and comment on these things. So that's fun. At least for me, it is.
Great. Oh, that's brilliant and so needed. It's you're getting the message out and it's having impact. So that's amazing. Hallelujah for technology, right? We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So where can everybody find your books, find your podcast, find all of where send people to where they can connect with you and your stuff?
Thanks. Well, my books are available on Amazon.com. They're also available through my website, gracewithpaulgray.com. They're a little less expensive at my website, and then I can sign them if people like and send them out there. My notes for Papa and the videos that I do and memes and things are on Grace to All with Paul Gray, Grace with Paul Gray. I put them on my personal site and some other sites like the New Covenant Grace Family and different ones. So I've been fortunate to be able to do that and share them. And so each day, as people go through the ever-growing number of things, they can read things by you and Marked by Love. They can read, they can see the Brother Henry and You show. They can see my things and see stuff by Derek and Kyle and just all kinds of other wonderful people. And I wish I had more time in the day so I could keep up with everything that everybody puts out.
Boy, isn't that the truth? There's so much good stuff. Yeah. So that's great. It's an abundance. So, well, make sure that you check out Paul on Amazon, on his website, on his Facebook page, on all of that. So much wealth that Paul carries, and it's been such a joy to have you on the Brother Henry and You show. It's just a pleasure just chatting and knowing you and hearing about what you're doing and what you're up to. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Catherine. It's really been a privilege and a pleasure. Thanks.
Awesome. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining, and keep in touch with everything that's going on the Brother Henry and You show. Check out Paul on all his various venues, and you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.
Bye.